Welcome, everybody. Good evening. Thank you so much for coming tonight to this event of Women in Sustainable Finance. Tonight, we are competing with the University of Zurich on an event on blended finance. So I'm very honored that you choose to come here. I see a lot of new faces, and I'm very thrilled that we are having this event on this very topic today, on energy transition. My name is Marta Ra. I'm the co-founder of Women in Sustainable Finance. As I see so many new people, I will do a short intro. Women in Sustainable Finance was founded over 6 years ago. We were 4 co-founders, all in banking finance, and said, okay, there are not enough women in sustainability and not enough women in banking who support capital to be channeled for good. So in solution providers like companies that produce solar panels. And there are obviously many other opportunities to do positive investments. And so we founded this, and we realized that if only bankers sit in one room, the world is not going to change. So we opened up, and now we have each month an event on a different topic, and we invite individuals from all different kind of sectors and disciplines, because only if we speak to each other, we can find together solutions. So I'm very happy. We have academics. We have also bankers, we have investors, we have people from insurance. I think this is where change starts, when people who are from different sides speak together. So energy transition. So I'm not an energy expert myself. I'm just a banker who is passionate about sustainability. This is a topic that obviously has been around very long, sustainable energy. And at least in my surroundings, it was always seen as something that is connected to ecology or saving the world and philanthropy, which is not. Obviously, it is also about ecology. It's also about CO2 emissions. It's also about climate change. But we want to make it a topic that is also interesting for people who want to invest in this amazing opportunity. So investing in something and also doing good at the same time. And I am sure we will speak about this later when my board member, Tina Minci, will moderate the panel. So the world has changed since the latest election in the US, and a lot of trends have maybe turned around and political opinions have changed. Today I found out that, for example, atom energy is seen in France as renewable energy. Just as an example, I wasn't aware. Thank you, Andreas, for letting me know. And so this energy transition is not only, let's say, ecological activity, it's also political, it's also sociological, it's also about technology, it's also about innovation, and at the very end, it's also about the people. And why? See, I always speak and I never use my slides, which is really a pity. Exactly, this is my slide. Why? Because, and the next slide will illustrate it. It's nice we are all sitting here with all the lights and air condition possibly, and we are consuming a lot of energy. And we're going to consume even more energy in the future. So it's not about enabling countries in the Southern Hemisphere having sustainable energy solutions, but it's actually about us. And not only those who are investing in crypto or etc., doing very energy intense activities. And before I pause here, I want to show you this slide, which really struck me, which really illustrates what I was about to say. So on the left-hand side, this axis is about the electricity consumption per capita in kilowatt. This axis is about GDP per capita. Here we have Madagascar, Liberia, India, China, Norway, UK. And what does it tell us? It's those kind of countries that consume most of the energy, and the demand is going to grow. But these kind of countries are going to take over very fast. They're going to accelerate very fast, a lot. And so it's wrong that we ask those countries to be energy mindful in their consumption, whereas those countries have consumed a lot very mindlessly in the past. So I want to say there is no such a thing as a low energy rich country. The ones that are very wealthy consume the most. And so it's the task of us who are speaking together and connecting that we do something for this disbalance to change. And with that, I would like to welcome to the front our distinctive keynote speaker, Abigail, who came all the way from Kenya today to give the keynote. So please give a round of applause to Abigail.
Thank you very much for having me here to discuss what you're doing in Africa when it comes to matters energy. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Kindly encourage me, because in Africa you have to, please. You've heard I'm just from Kenya, right? Yeah, okay. I was born and raised in Kibera, the largest slum in Africa, where access to clean and sustainable energy was nothing short of a luxury. Growing up, my family relied on kerosene light and firewood for cooking. As you can see, that's the slums of Kibera. And our cooking options was just firewood, and you can see that this contributed to health risks, environmental harm, and financial strain. My mother ran a small business selling kerosene fuel to support our family. It was my responsibility as a kid to sell kerosene in the evenings after school while she was preparing dinner. And one day, I almost died. I experienced an accident through the selling of kerosene lamp. According to Kenya Medical Research Institute, 19,000 people die annually in Kenya due to energy-related accidents and health challenges, with the majority being women. You can see the reason why I'm here. This harsh reality inspired me to dream of ways to address energy poverty through clean and sustainable energy solutions in underserved communities, that is rural areas and the slums and informal settlements in Kenya. My turning point came when I encountered Solafrica, an independent Swiss non-profit organization founded in 2010 and based in Bern that promotes the use of solar energy in economically disadvantaged regions in the global south. By embracing solar energy, I saw an opportunity to empower vulnerable and marginalized community using solar energy. Just as you said, I'm also not an engineer, I'm a social scientist. My mission inspired me to start an organization called Mtaani, CBO, a project partner of Solafrica, and our impact stories led to my recognition as a recipient of Queen of Energy Africa Award in the mentorship category. Now I can go through my slide. That's me receiving an award. And then thank you. And at least now you know Solafrica, it's a Swiss-based organization, and that is Mtaani, the organization that are founded in Kenya. We have different project activities that we have launched in partnership with Solafrica, and one of it is solar learning for the youths, and we have trained 245 students, and collectively partnering with different solar companies through job placements and internship, we have been able to do a 28 megawatts installation equivalent to 14,000 households accessing clean energy. These are all our students, as you can see. The other project activity that you're doing that brings me here today is the different business models that we have developed for women in Kenya in reduction of energy poverty, and also to generate an income through business models is this project now. So for Solar Women project, the kind of women that we work with is widows. There is a risk of widows' inheritance in Kenya. I know this is a different audience, you may not understand. We still have issues like widows' inheritance. When your spouse died, God forbid, you're remarried by the spouse to your husband. There's still gender-based violence, young mothers, young brides, teenage mothers. So for us to use solar technology both to reduce poverty and to empower them economically, we develop different business models where we have things like solar kiosk, charging mobile phones for a fee. We have solar millers where we maize mill for a fee, and solar sewing machines and distribution of solar lanterns. As you can see, that at the corner is solar kiosk, solar portion mill, solar sewing machine, and distribution of solar lanterns. Now, I'm going to speak about one of our successful business model, which is solar miller. And traditionally, and our staple food is ugali. I know in Swiss you do a lot of potatoes and cheese. Thank you so much. For us, we do something called ugali. You can see that. And whenever white people, we call them wazungus, come to Africa, they struggle to eat that because it's not spiced. So traditionally, it's men that used to do the milling because it's a male-dominated industry relying on large, empowered machines that require significant and a lot of power to be used. And these millers are also located far apart and forcing women to endure long journeys and to incur transport costs. As you understand, when it comes to energy poverty, it's women that suffers most. Like in Africa, you have to walk miles and miles to go and fetch firewood, miles and miles to go and do milling, etc. So in partnership with Solar Africa, we developed a solar business model where we work with groups. We have an acronym in Kenya we call CHAMA, where we come together to help each other to achieve a common goal. So for this purpose, we came with this CHAMA, Solar CHAMA, to achieve a common goal of empowering women economically. And we mill the maize for a fee. And you can see the micro miller is women friendly. A woman can operate the machine. It's no longer the big machines that men have to heat, and it needs a lot of manual job that only a man can manage. And these are widows along the coastal region that are at risk of being inherited, and they cannot make any financial decision or any personal decision. So after milling, of course, they get at least 25,000 per day as a group, of which it helps to reduce energy poverty, reduce all the issues that women we go through. So Mtaani, our vision. We would love to increase the number of licensed female technicians. In Kenya alone, we have 992 active licensed technicians according to Energy Petroleum Regulatory Authority, of which only 65 are women, the whole country, which is a sad state. If we have many women, then they are more empowered, and still we have clean energy, etc. The other thing that you want to do is to introduce dual education. It's only done with 2 institutions in the country, where at least you can have 1 week of training and the other weeks you are in the industrial sector. We also want to introduce impact investment for more productive use of solar energy, like, for example, reduction of post-harvest waste, where a lot of produce is wasted after harvest because you do not have proper way of storing the food, like cold rooms, solar cold rooms, also using solar dryers to do value addition so that they can reach proper market, and also do solar irrigation. And another technique that is coming up, mostly it's a use of solar ovens, where we can just bake through the use of ovens and sell the produce. Asanteni. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abigail. So energy transition, it's not only about driving Tesla cars, right? It can it can enable communities and lift up individuals and make people independent. Okay, all right. So I have not followed the strict agenda, telling you first what we will talk about today, so I'm just going to do it verbally. So I'm calling now Tina to the front, who is a board member of Women in Sustainable Finance, and she will moderate the panel and introduce all our speakers. And until she comes to the front, the rest of the evening, so after the panel, we will have a Q&A where also Abigail will come to the front and we will do a Q&A. And after that, I will do a quick roundup, and then we will end the evening with an apéro. So Tina will introduce our speakers. Yes. There you go.
Thank you, Marta. And thank you as well, Abigail, for this very great keynote. So we have seen a great business case so that we can see actually there is a lot of impact that can be driven as well with renewable energy projects. And our goal now is a bit to discuss, let's say, the boring financing investment part, and as well the innovation that is clearly needed to drive a bit more scalability and as well the impact side. So I'm just waiting that the church is as well closing the work for the moment. Great. So let me see here. So we are all set. So I'm very thankful for you all to have you today on the panel, because we talk a lot about the sustainability part usually in our events, but I think important in order to as well attract some more investments is as well the investment and the financing side. So I would like to give you now the opportunity to introduce yourself and what you do at your organization.
Thank you very much. So my name is Caterina, and I'm a managing director in the investments team of Energy Infrastructure Partners. We do long-term investments for institutional investors and only in energy infrastructure. So we are a bit more than 100 people who from Zurich, Luxembourg, and also from Germany. We do these long-term investments, and we do not only do renewables, but we also do system critical, because our understanding from a sustainability is really that it is also really important to ensure security of supply for countries. That's why we do grids, we do storages, and we do, of course, also renewable power plants. Myself, I'm a lawyer. I was caught up in the energy sector 15 years ago by actually coincidence, and I never found my way back to a law firm, which I'm actually quite happy about, because it's, I think, one of the most thrilling sectors you can work on. And I'm also very happy to have my colleagues here today with me. So if you have questions, just reach out also afterwards during the apéro.
Hi everyone, my name is Cristina. I'm currently working for SERV. SERV is a Swiss export credit risk agency, which supports infrastructure as well as power projects with guarantees products. So it acts as an insurer. By background, I'm also a lawyer, and I found my way 15 years ago, coincidentally, in the infrastructure finance space. I was initially with KPMG UK in the economic regulation team. I then discovered as Caterina that it's actually a very exciting and interesting area, and stayed and tried different roles. I was in the banking area, advisory area, multilateral as well. I worked for European Investment Bank for a couple of years, then Credit Suisse, and now SERV. And I have my colleague from SERV with me as well. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Hi, this slide is so intense. I'm not used to it. I'm a researcher. I usually spend time in front of my PC. So my name is Egor, and as I said before, I'm a researcher at the University of Luxembourg, and also I'm a member of the task force in the United Nations. At the University of Luxembourg, I conduct interdisciplinary research. It means it involves many disciplines, and usually the research projects are on the edge of different disciplines, not just two, but usually 3, 4. And one of my research projects is essentially about sustainability, and with this project I work for the task force in the United Nations. It's a ESG KPI reporting system, a reporting system for sustainability metrics. So I got in touch with Marta recently during one of the meetings of the task force. She advertise this event. And because I grew up in a family with just mother, not two parents, I always think that it's my duty to support all the initiatives of women, and that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you all for the great introduction. I would like to start actually with the investment landscape, because usually whoever joins my events, I usually try to have some dedicated sessions so that everyone's expertise can as well shine through the sessions very well. With regards to investments, so Caterina, your turn is the first. How have actually investment trends evolved within the renewable energy sector in the last few years? And have you actually seen some shifts in capital?
So if you may allow, I will start answering with a broader scope than just the renewables, because we've seen some drastic evolutions in the last years in the energy sector. I mean, if you think of 2022, when suddenly Russian gas pipeline gas flows to Europe stopped, and a country like Germany from one day to another did not have any cheap Russian gas left. We have discovered in the last 2 years also the vulnerability of the Middle Eastern supply routes for energy. Then, I mean, last weekend, Heathrow stopped for like 24 or 48 hours because a fire of a local substation, which shows energy is very relevant, as we can see. And then electrification. I mean, we do all change our oil and gas heaters to heating pumps, but this actually needs electricity, right? Same for AI. I've read that an AI request, you might know better than I do, requires 10 times more electricity than a normal Google research. And I think what this really shows is the system criticality of investments into energy infrastructure. And this is really something which also defines, in our opinion, most of the trends we see. And I would say we have 4 trends currently. The first one is it's not becoming less, it's becoming more. And I think I've noted down a figure which is mind-blowing. 2024, 2.1 trillion investments into the energy transition. That's 11% more than the year before. And decarbonization, for us, the second trend, and some people might think now with focus on security of supply and also just geopolitical security, that decarbonization and investments in renewable become less important. But I think it's not that. I mean, also investment figures shows that's 728 billion in 2024. That's 8% increase since the last year. And I think it's kind of understandable, because what do you rely on in geopolitical unstable times? It's basically the energy you have at home. So you rely on solar, you rely on wind, you rely on hydro if you're lucky enough to have, as in Switzerland. I think that's a major trend which we see continuing. And I think there's a landmark coming. I read that 2025 will actually be the first year where there will be more electricity produced through renewable technologies than coal-fired power plants. So I think if this is going to be really done by end of the year, that's quite mind-blowing. The third trend is for us flexibility, because the more you invest in renewables, the more you seek flexibility for the system. These will be investments in batteries, in storages, in grids to a certain part. And for example, one of our portfolio companies, Alpic, which is very big in hydropower plants in Switzerland, flexibility is really key to their investment strategy for the next decades to come. And the last point, which might sound a bit surprising for some people, is really geographies. I mean, renewables was a big thing first in the US, in the EU. But what we've seen is now China has become the biggest renewable producer globally. And I think that says it all, right?
Thank you, Caterina. You mentioned already the technologies. Do you see there as well some tendencies for some technologies that are maybe more preferred within the investment landscape?
I wouldn't just want to limit it to technologies, because I think one of the most published sector, I mean, you hardly read about it, is grids, right? We all speak about renewables and well, wind, solar, etc. But this is not going to work if we do not invest heavily into the grid. I think Germany needs to invest 500 billions by 2045 to get the grid ready. If you think in Switzerland, they're putting a lot of money in alpine solar, which is a great idea also for winter production. But if you don't have the capabilities to transport the energy to the consumer, it's not going to work. And this is even more applicable in a decentralized energy world. And with respect to technology, one thing we're really looking at is repurposing existing infrastructure, because it's so difficult to get permits to build out new infrastructure. So we at Energy Infrastructure Partners, for example, we invest in existing gas grids, but not because we're a huge fan of gas grids, right? But we are long-term investors, so we do 25 years plus, and what we're really seeking is a way to transport molecules in the future. So if it's today natural gas, we are seeking for solutions with, for example, hydrogen. I'm in the board of Fluxus. That's the operator of the transit gas pipeline in Switzerland. That's a natural gas pipeline. But what we're seeking for now is really to revamp this pipeline for hydrogen, so that at a certain point we can then transport green molecules in order to use existing infrastructure for the energy transition. So, I mean, summing up, there is a say, no transition without transmission. And I think that's probably the technology I would not underestimate, despite the fact that you don't read much about it.
Very interesting. Thank you very much for these inputs. We talk now about the opportunities actually that we see from an investment perspective, but we always have as well the risk side. What kind of risks are you confronted with?
So I think I picked two for today. There are obviously more, also if there are many opportunities. So I come from a regulatory background because I'm a lawyer. So politics and regulation are one of the key risks we inform our investors about, because you cannot have system critical energy in your portfolio on a long-term basis if you do not anticipate what politics and regulation is doing it. I mean, energy policy is becoming industry policy in many countries. So it is crucial that the industry has reliable, affordable and sustainable energy on a long term if you don't want your industry like BASF to wander off to China, for example. So it is very, the chances that the energy sector is being scrutinized by the public sentiment and by new regulation is very high. So what we really do is we try to anticipate what is coming and to invest and to manage our assets in a way which actually keeps them in a right wind, I would say, like a sailing boat, to make sure that they are always well positioned. This is the first risk. And the other risk, I'm sure my colleague Anja from our sustainability team can tell you more about it in a break, but it's the supply chain. I mean, the more geopolitical tension we have, the more the supply chain is at risk. We need to be aware of this for all kinds of resources we invest in, and there is no resource which does not come with the supply chain risk in the energy sector. We need to be, I think, very honest about that.
Thank you, Caterina. Cristina, looking at you actually, because you said before you have been approaching the energy sector, renewables from a lending perspective through your previous jobs, but now with the insurance lens as well. SERV is a Swiss, so it's a governmental organization. So you are actually now seeing a bit all the different perspectives now within your role. And project financing has been as well something that has been considered risky. Let's say if you look at the financial perspective too. And now, as we have already mentioned, the risk side from an investment perspective, how has the risk side been approached, for example, now within a project, larger scale investment projects too, where, for example, as well governance are involved?
Yeah, so just to start with saying that project finance is inherently a risky lending product. So there is no simple, plain vanilla project finance. Now, as we saw in the presentation of Marta, the market is quite fragmented. So you see different risks in emerging markets compared to developed markets. Emerging markets, of course, you have a lot of political risk, and you don't have the regulatory framework to do project finance. So most of the investments in Africa or emerging markets are done on a blended finance basis. There are always some guarantors, be it the Ministry of Finance, locally, or some multilaterals. Now, if you're talking about large-scale investments, these have mainly happened in Western Europe or OECD high-income countries, and there we have seen risks being mitigated in different ways, where there has been an element of new technology. To give the example of the large offshore wind farms, which were built in the North Sea or in the UK, it was very interesting to see how government, the industry, and investors worked together from the very beginning. The UK had something called the electricity market reform in the 2000s and surveyed the market to understand what kind of incentives they could put in place to scale up the offshore wind projects. And then on the first project, you had contract for difference mechanism supports and export credit agencies like SERV working together alongside commercial banks to support investments. But I think to answer directly and simply to your question, I think the answer lies in the ability of the sponsor and developer to identify early on the risks and ensure that they engage with the parties that are most knowledgeable and prepared to address this risk, be it the contractors involved on the projects, on the construction risk side, be it the financiers, and you have commercial banks with experience in certain markets who can act as anchor financing and bring along other institutions, be it multilaterals or government support to enhance the economics of the projects.
Thank you, Cristina. You mentioned already, let's say, blended finance, guarantees, etc.
Yeah.
How does these ways of financing actually as well impact the scalability of the project? So can you actually only do large-scale projects with many, many actors involved, or how is this working?
So you definitely need to have partnership between private and public sector participants, because just purely by the nature of the scale of the financing that you require, even in OECD high-income countries or Western Europe, you don't find that much liquidity. And this we have seen recently on offshore wind projects, which arguably they are no longer new technology. There's just an element of incremental capacity, but they cannot be qualified as new technology. But you still see some public sector participants being involved just because of the nature of the liquidity required. And I also checked some stats, and I realized that actually there's a lot of capital required. And according to the International Energy Agency, by 2030, it will be an investment in the region of $1 trillion per annum. So that cannot be delivered by the private sector on its own. Yeah.
It's as well a bit scary when you hear such figures, right? That it takes a lot. It takes a lot to do it. You mentioned the capital, but you mentioned as well before as well, you, Caterina, that the geopolitics play a big role, and especially then as well, maybe in certain areas, some policy barriers that are maybe not really supporting energy project or renewable projects. Is there anything that you see that is key in order to enable such projects, if we think now maybe as well for developing countries and not only for developed countries?
Yes, so definitely for developing countries, the lack of regulation and frameworks is a big issue, because investors don't have the certainty of recovering their investments. There's a lot of political risk involved. And we do see some progress in these areas with support from multilaterals like EBRD, for example. They have a technical program whereby they go and collaborate with the Ministry of Finance and the ministries involved in particular projects to develop public partnership frameworks. So there has been some progress. However, it's quite slow. So I think key to seeing some project finance soon in emerging markets is to have a regulatory framework that works for investments.
Thank you, Cristina. Egor, you are our digitalization and innovation SME on this panel, and as well as you mentioned before, your engagement at the UN for the Task Force on Digitalization plays as well a key role on your research. We mentioned technologies and digitalization already a few times by now. What are some of the key innovations through digitalization that could actually enhance maybe more investments? What do you see actually through your activities?
Talking about enhancement in investment, I hope that we are talking about responsible investment, right? Because we're in the field of energy, which is one of the main contributors to CO2 emission around the world, right? And because we're in sustainable finance here, let's talk about responsible investments and corresponding risks, okay? There are some specific risks which correspond to, responsible investment. And these risks are greenwashing and institutional distrust. Greenwashing leads to institutional distrust, basically. And why it happens? Because currently companies, they publish this data in the annual reports. And this data is not traceable backwards. And this data is made and sometimes, unfortunately, made up by humans and stored as PDF files on the websites. And it leads to greenwashing in some cases and issues with the trust to the entities which report this data, and especially in the energy sector. So how to resolve this problem? We need to have proper data streamlining, right? To prevent a situation when this data is made up by people by means, and talking about enhancement in the energy sector, right? It would be data which is streamlined directly by the Internet of Things devices with secure hardware, the same way as smart meters in your households. They have a piece of hardware inside which signs each chunk of the data, and that's why your service provider can trust you, because the service provider can trust to your smart meter, right? And talking about enhancement in the responsible investment reporting, right? I would summarize it as digital twins with like proper data streamline. Then I would say that there should be specific tailored AI models which post-process this data from Internet of Things devices, similar to smart meters, but at the enterprise level. And then this data is going to be stored on the public ledger, such as blockchain, to prevent changes in this data. And in this case scenario, we will be able to trust the source of data, trust the whole pipeline process. And this is how we can reach enhancement of the responsible investment opportunities by the help of technologies.
Very interesting and very good inputs in terms of the reporting. Let's say now you are maybe not dealing always with, let's say, institutions that do large reportings, right? So it's not always that you can use reports. Is there some technology that can be as well, let's say, be more important for the data streams, let's say, if you're not only through reporting? So how can maybe this workflow or this assessment work?
Can you specify the question?
So, for example, if you are sourcing, let's say you need some KPIs on the performance on the energy side, so being it, how is it called, the use, etc., or the CO2 emissions, etc., that they can as well measure it to see actually how renewable, how responsible it could be, right?
Okay, so I see that there you tackle like two problems, right? The problem of transparency and of the data and how it helps to mitigate such risks, right?
Exactly, but then, for example, in a project directly.
So in a project directly, so that there is one technology with two main properties, as I mentioned before, the append-only data storage in the append-only manner. So basically what it means that you write A, then you write B, then you write C, and you cannot erase neither A nor B nor C. This is the way how append-only data storage works, right? And how it's linked to renewable projects, right? And this technology is called blockchain. You probably heard about this. And it's not only about basic financial transactions, right? Like in the case of Bitcoin, where you see that Egor sent 1 Bitcoin to Marta and then it's transparent. No, it's not only about this. It's also about so-called smart contracts, which preserve transparency and still bring some additional custom logic, which can be implemented as anything. In the case with reporting, it would be writing data on blockchain about ESG KPIs. And ESG KPIs are essentially environmental, social governance metrics, which correspond to the sustainability and environmental impact of the company on the environment and society and governance. So, that's the idea. And if we have this technology and if we have an ability to write any logic and handle it on top of the blockchain, then it means all the interactions are going to be, first of all, transparent and traceable backwards at any moment of time. That's why it's so suitable for ESG reporting, where we need this transparency. And basically that's it.
Thank you, Egor, for the explanations. We touched upon collaboration before, right? Being it institutions, being it financing institutions. Are there some innovative models that you have seen so far in the market? And this question goes to all of you.
Do you have any ideas?
You want to take it?
Yes, so what I have seen for new technologies being scaled up is basically collaboration between public sector and private institutions in the sense of designing risk instruments, for example, guarantees, support mechanism. That has been a lot used in the first years of the launch of the renewables projects, as well as in more emerging markets, public partnership, public-private partnership models, which have actually worked quite well. This has been used successfully mainly in social infrastructure, so health and education sector, more than in the renewables. Yeah.
So I said earlier that one of the key risks we have is regulation and politics. So we do a lot of public-private partnerships just for this reason, because by investing with the government who then has skin in the game, you can to a certain extent also control regulation, which might harm you. And if on top your asset is system critical, for example, by providing electricity, green electricity to the country's largest aluminium factory, of course, this is then an additional one. But I think the energy sector, without partnerships between public and private, to me, it's unthinkable.
Thank you. Maybe as well from the collaborations you see, maybe as well with the task force, how do they maybe support the topic in this context?
Can you repeat the question?
How does, for example, the task force itself maybe as well serve as an innovation round or discussion as well for enhancing energy investments?
Okay, so first of all, we observe the existing data by the help of surveys, and I lead one project direction about the survey in the field of the digitalization within the task force. And if you would like to participate, you can also add me on LinkedIn and I will post information about the survey. And this information is essentially going to be collected and then processed from the analytical perspective to understand all the initiatives around the world. We need to understand the UN is like intergovernmental organization, and we analyze this data at a high level. So this survey will not require any deep technical knowledge or so.
Thank you, and yeah, for whoever's interested, let's participate there. So we are soon approaching the end of the panel and then moving to the Q&A. So I would like a bit to hear from you. How do you see actually the outlook for the future? Where do you see actually maybe the biggest breakthroughs that might come in the future in the energy sector?
If I may, also from the perspective of technology, there is a very miracle technology, blockchain, which has the established ecosystem in the field of digital finance, so-called DeFi. There are possible some miraculous things, such as, for example, flash loans, where you can take uncollateralized loans and return it within 16 seconds by the end of the block in blockchain, and it can be up to millions of equivalent of euros or dollars. And imagine this technology in the sector of energy finance, where we have these features applied to the energy market. It would be crazy. And also additional freedom, for example, on decentralized exchanges, where you can create your own assets, stake it in liquidity pools, so people will be able to trade your own assets in this liquidity pool. Imagine application of this to the energy sector. And right now we're missing regulatory frameworks, getting back to your mentions of the regulation, which would bring it from the grayish, I would say, zone to the real world. I think it will boost the status quo in the energy market. Talking about innovations.
Yeah, perhaps just angle of the export credit agencies, where they are looking for breakthroughs in the short term. One area is definitely green hydrogen. It seems that it has got some momentum, and all the players around the industry, including investors, are very focused and want to make this happen. And the second one is small modular reactors, to Marta's comment, which it seems that nuclear energy is also qualifying as green energy. So these two areas we see increased focus and expected breakthroughs.
I can only echo on this. So green hydrogen, nuclear technology, even if we wouldn't invest in this directly, but I think it will affect the energy system as such if we have it. And I think summing up the trend for me, which never ends, is there is a lot of investment need in the energy sector, and it will grow daily. And I think public scrutiny on the energy sector will grow. I remember when I started in the business and told people that I work in the energy sector, it was like, hey, you weirdo, what are you doing? And now it's like, energy sector, nice. I have 5 more friends who do the same thing. So I think it's just public interest and attention on the sector has grown massively, also because of the investment need.
Great. So thank you very much for this great panel. And I would like to start the Q&A, and therefore I will move. So I will give Abigail the possibility to as well get some questions.
Yes. Hello. Please get up. Your name and where you work.
Okay. Hello, my name is Flora Comte. I am a member of the board of Solafrica, like Marta, and I'm also an environmental consultant in Carbotech, a Swiss company. I have very little to do with finance, but I know how important it is. And I also know how important it is that we have many women in finance. And I have a question to you regarding one aspect that I'm not hearing at all, is not only technologies and investing in infrastructure regarding energy transition, but also energy efficiency and just not using energy. And I would like to ask you whether this is a topic in the finance sector, or is it just too cheap?
No, so I can take this question because I work on projects. It is, and this is part of the environmental and social due diligence overall assessment. So it is an area that is given a lot of attention to. And it is actually considered as a positive qualifier of a project, energy efficiency. So we look for projects which use the most efficient technology, which maybe in combination, nowadays you have a lot of new technologies being used together. So, for example, solar with storage solutions, which perhaps is not the most overall efficient technology. So we do look at these aspects as well. But that, I think, it's also dependent on the mandate of each institution. So I think SERV has a focus on climate change, and we have a green acquisition strategy, target, etc. But then I'm not sure if all the institutions have this focus. So as long as they have a focus on ESG goals and climate targets, then that's an important area. Yeah.
Well, our mandate is, I would say, the pure infra play. So we do efficiency, but it's not the main mandate we have from our investors. I, however, used to work for the Swiss cantons, and they have the task to regulate buildings, right? And you said it's not a lot of money. It is, if you think of what subsidies can do. I mean, the state in Switzerland, but also in other countries, pays a lot of subsidies that you replace your fossil heater by a heating pump. And it's a lot more difficult to actually get people to efficiency renovate their houses. And especially in Switzerland, where it's super cold, it's so important that also efficiency work is done. But if you compare prices of a heating pump, which is like 25,000 probably in Switzerland, to efficiency renovate your house, which can be up to 100,000, it's not so easy to get this financed, and especially also through the institutional players, because you cannot scale it. And I think this is something you see a lot in the efficiency sector, that scalability is extremely difficult when it comes to those financial streams.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. I can repeat the question. It's like, how can the finance sector contribute to not only transition the technologies, and not only the energy efficiency, but also the reduction of uses of energy, which is one of the main aspects?
I think by the help of investment into a flexibility market. If you're familiar with this, so basically I have my household, right, and I know the schedule of my energy consumption. And that's in a nutshell, the idea of flexibility market, that basically I can guarantee with certain probability that during some hours of the day, I can guarantee that my consumption is going to be either lower than a certain threshold or higher. That's how the flexible market can make the estimation of my consumption. And I think that investment in this area of households and some IoT devices which help to forecast it, I think that's the key. I hope I answered.
I will contribute according to the narrative I was talking about. The capital investment of us using clean energy is expensive. So what the government of Kenya has done is we have something we call our SIM card is Safaricom. So we have something called M-Pesa. We do a lot of mobile banking. So the government has tried to come with an app called M-Kopa to help people to buy solar energy, of which it's pay as you go. So you don't have to buy once, which discourages people to transit to clean energy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I understand the meditation music is very relaxing. Now it's time slowly to open your eyes. Don't be shy. Yeah, Annemarie, please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Anne-Marie Fischer. Thank you so much for this energizing presentation. My question is, now the traditional energy is presented as the rational one, the energy of the strong male, the alpha energy. How can we change the narrative that is actually what you are all doing is rational and long-term and sustainable? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a that's a difficult question. So if I'm not answering, please stop me. Yeah, so I think because the market is fragmented, which I said in the beginning, there's no one solution for each geography. So I think that there must be some regional thought through solutions because as Caterina also noted, there are different levels of regulation risks. So I think you can only have this certainty once you have fully understood a regional context and developed a regional solution, which I don't know if anybody has gone as far as that. So I don't know if that answers your questions. Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, I have nothing to add.
I think I'll just back up what she said. You have to understand the energy needs of a specific area, and then you have to understand their ways of lives, and maybe how energy poverty is working, affecting different communities, and then you develop solutions with specific communities. Even the business models that I was speaking about, it's not for all the women in Kenya, it's different for each and every community because we have the coastal region, the western Kenya, the central Kenya, and north. So north, we do clean energy. Coastal, it's the solar millers, and then the west, we're doing solar trainings. So it depends what you're trying to address. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, I'll take you in a second. Please introduce yourself, where you work. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Caterina. I'm with Energy Infrastructure Partners, but please leave that aside. Yeah. I have a question for Egor, and that is regarding SFDR or ESG reporting requirements. When you look back or when you think back a few years, ESG was perceived as a huge opportunity for the finance industry, and everybody loved it. But however, since time has gone by, and now you can sense more and more frustration on the investor and public side when it comes to ESG. And now I'm a little provocative now. And now you are sort of like promoting the further digitalization to trace back the reliability of data, more and more data. So the requirements for investors or for providers of products are sort of like overwhelming. You're asking for more, and now you even want to make it more reliable via blockchain. And in the end, somebody has to pay for that. And I'm actually wondering, or my question is, what do you see is the content-wise really value add of that more and more compared to the sort of like the cost return for all of us, for this sort of like overwhelming UN initiative on, as you said, on a very high level that has quite an impact on a very daily working level for a lot of people from various stakeholders in the industry.
Thank you so much for the question. It's a proper question. Let me try to address it. So, first of all, we already have this problem, but companies just publish this data on their websites, right? They somehow interpret the overlapping, sometimes incorrect, because there are some contradiction, regulatory requirements, right? If we pay attention to UN pillars, 6 pillars, if we pay attention to the SFDR 9, from the EU taxonomy, then we already have some sort of contradiction. And if we are talking about a certain company which reports and tries to interpret it within a certain business domain in which this company operates, there are so many contradictions, there are so many misunderstandings, but this is already existing problem. An additional layer of digitalization, which brings transparency to this context, we don't really think that it's gonna bring additional problems. The idea is that with these projects, we try to understand how exactly current regulations overlap each other in the level of European Union, in the more global intergovernmental level from the perspective of the United Nations. We try to simplify it in order to understand where they intersect and how exactly they overlap, to provide a standardized approach for ESG reporting for a certain business domain. And if I may add one more example, have you played blackjack? The card game, right? If we try to describe this game, it will take 400 pages. But there are some smart people who are knowledgeable in the field of game theory. They managed to formalize this game and describe the whole game and all the processes in a matter of less than 20 pages. We try to do more or less the same with regulation. We try to understand how to simplify it in order to not break it during reporting. I hope I answered, at least partially.
Yes, sounds great. But still, who do you think, on your high level, who's going to pay for it in the end? I mean, you're not even a standard setter. If I'm active, if I'm an active investor or an active financial institution in a regulatory framework of Switzerland or some EU country, I have to comply with EU/Swiss regulation. And the UN PRI is sort of like an add-on that I can or cannot, Yeah. So you are on that level, but how are you going to bring it into action? Or let's rephrase. I think you can only really bring it into action if there is some advantage for the players for that standardization or simplification, and that can only happen if it is not an add-on to my anyhow existing reporting requirements, but if they be replaced by your digitalized whatever, How do you think? Is that even realistic? How do you envisage that to happen so that it actually really does make a content-wise contribution, to efficiency?
Okay, first of all, I need to say that my personal opinion doesn't represent neither official opinion of the University of Luxembourg nor
That's why I said
the United Nations.
That I'm with EIP.
Okay.
So,
yes, I already signed the IP document with this event. I would say companies already, do you do your ESG reporting on your own on behalf of your business?
Of course. Yes. Of course.
Don't you pay any consulting companies?
We do it ourselves, sir.
You do it ourselves. The majority of businesses, based on our research, use services provided by consultings.
That's a common
okay.
risk, yes.
Okay. So currently companies pay to the consulting companies to do it, then they will pay to such initiatives, which are going to be private sector driven initiatives. This is my personal opinion, which doesn't represent neither opinion of the University of Luxembourg nor the UN. Thank you for your question. I really like your question. Thank you so much.
So now you can see how tough the questions of Caterina in our IC meetings are.
We love tough questions, right? We have another question here.
Please, so we take this one and then
yes.
we can start with the opera. Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Mafrida. Thank you so much for the panel. I would just like to go back to the slide that Marta showed before with this, with the axis of the wealth in the country and then also the energy consumption and intensity. And I'm just wondering, within the richer countries, which is where we are now and where the three of you are working, is there a certain rhetoric or discussion or dialogue around how to balance this? I know we are talking about energy transition, but really from the perspective of, are there sacrifices that need to be made by the richer countries, the West, in order to allow the others to develop instead of kind of suppressing their use of the energy that will come with growth of the economy? So is there a conversation that's happening and what is it saying?
I might not answer directly, but one connotation I immediately make would be the example of one of our investments, I mentioned it earlier, the transit gas pipeline. It's a pipeline which is a natural gas pipeline which connects Germany, France, and Italy. And you will say, okay, what does this matter? Right? The hydrogen case I explained earlier is really foreseeing that hydrogen from Africa will be transported up north. So, and I think developments like this, without an NGO character, were really commercial developments. This will, in the end, be a very natural development of green hydrogen, for example, in Northern Africa.
Yeah. And just to continue from your idea, I am aware of a few large investments which are actually aimed at connecting the infrastructure grid of Africa, starting with North Africa to Europe, so that it's reverse flow both ways, so both continents can benefit from the energy production. But I think what is also important to mention is that at the individual level, at least that's my perception, that many people and more people actually become aware of energy efficiency, and they start using from domestic products, domestic goods which are energy efficient, etc., trying to actually reduce overall energy consumption in the country. So in the end, I think that individual contribution would have the highest impact, and we are on a path to become more and more aware.
Actually, I have no opinion on this matter, but I really hope that it's going to be a fair trade for both stakeholders, Africa and Europe, if this merge is going to take place. I hope.
What I could just say is that I know of few investors that are already interested in Africa, and there are few solar companies that are already discussing on how to go about it.
Great, thank you very much. Is there a last burning question? No. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all. And now I give you the word, Marta,
Yes,
for the last few remarks.
Let's applause first to the panel. So before I let you go off to the apéro, I'm sure you're all thirsty and very relaxed. There will be nice food in a few minutes. I just want to share with you what kind of events we have coming up. So we do an event each month, and the next one is about sustainability in the area of digital transformation. Very similar also to what we talked today about digitization and data. And we have organization, Green Digital Finance Alliance and Green FinTech Network. It's a association from Switzerland. Then we have Blue Orchard, a private equity investor, a sustainability investor, and then another investing network, a sustainability network. And we will speak about how digital transformation enabled the sustainability area. So please join us. Here is a QR code. It will take place not here, but at Blue Orchard. And one more thing, which I'm really happy to announce, and I would like to ask Marta, it's very seldom that someone has my name, to come forward, please. So in our last community session, there was a feedback that our members wish more informal networking. And we listened very closely, and now we have found someone who is going to support us in this. And I think the best person to explain this is Marta. So please, if you can introduce yourself and share the idea and what we would like to do and offer and what is coming up.
Thank you, Marta. It's so good to have this name now. So I'm a huge fan of the Women in Sustainable Finance community, and I loved the networking when I was here during the apéro. But networking is not easy for everybody. Some people feel that it's you get the excitement, you get the heartbeat. Sometimes you don't know what to say and how to connect to people where you think they are interesting, because networking is a skill. And I'm an executive trainer. I work a lot with groups and corporates, with individuals, with female founders to help them with their executive presence. So I wanted to offer this to the community, a facilitated networking session as a members' lunch. So you will
spend some time to get to know 2 or 3 quality contacts, to not just exchange business cards, but to really connect on a deeper level and create the impact that we want to see in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marta. So here is a QR code where you can already sign up to. So I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of you there who will then become together with me a networking pro. And last but not least, this is a cheat slide actually of mine, because I always get to forget to say thank you. So now I'm changing the side. Oh, no, the microphone is starting to beep if I stand there. So first of all, thank you to the distinctive panel, the panelists who came from all over the world, all the way from Kenya, from Luxembourg, also from Switzerland. Of course, we are most grateful. It's really nice to have such an interdisciplinary panel. I mean, we have subject matter experts here, women and men, who bring different perspectives into the discussion. And I think we really learned a lot. As I said, it's very boring if only bankers speak to bankers. And I think this made this conversation so lively and so, let's say, realistic and approachable. So thank you very much for coming. And then I would like to thank the Women in Sustainable Finance team, such as Tina, who is a board member. We are also a non-for-profit organization, and Tina is a professional consultant during the day, and her free time, the little free time she has, she dedicates to women in sustainable finance. And there were some other members of our non-for-profit who welcomed you. So I would like to say thank you also to the dedicated team. And finally, to Hiltel, who is our value-aligned location partner. We are now calling this our Women in Sustainable Finance Clubhouse. So I would like to also thank to Hiltel. All right. Well, last but not least, if you liked tonight's event, if you liked our discussion, if you just liked the networking or the team, please join us. As I mentioned, we are a non-for-profit. We finance ourselves with memberships, so we can pay Hiltel for hosting us here and having the nice drinks. We would appreciate if you join us, and wishing you a very nice evening. Thank you very much all for coming.